Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome yet again to another episode of Dinner Guide. I'm your host Chef Andy, and today I'm going to be taking you festive. I'm going to be showing you something you can do this Christmas or this Christmas season. I'm going to be showing you something from the heart of South Africa, something I loved there, and I definitely loved it so much I thought I'd share it with you on the show. So without further ado, let me first introduce the ingredients. So I'm going to be working with some beef mince, which is the base of the dish. I'm also going to be working with some onions, some lemons, some eggs there, some sweet potatoes, a bit of grated carrot, a bit of some tomatoes, some breadcrumbs, some flour. I also have some ketchup and some barbecue. I've got some butter and some salt. I've also got some red wine there. I've got some spring onions, some parsley, some sugar, and some olive oil. So without further ado, I'm gonna let you grab this chance and actually refresh before we continue with the show. If you're going to be taking any notes, this is the best time to grab your pen and paper. And when we come back, we're gonna dive into this beautiful preparation. So see you after a short while. Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. If you're just catching up with us, we were just introducing the ingredients we work with. We were also just about to just start frying some meat, so that's what we're just going to jump in and do. So very crucial that you brown your meat. It's actually the first cooking stage of working with minced meat. I particularly like to insist that you fry your mince really pretty much to about 3/4 way to its cooking designation, because first of all, it helps you cook down the excess fats in there. It actually allows you to rush the process of cooking your dish. And second of all, it is actually safer to you because you actually sterilize the meat. So very crucial that you actually get this going on a hot pan. So as I always insist, have some oil in your pan, swirl it around a little bit, make sure to actually get at least most of the surface covered in your olive oil. This is just to make sure your meat doesn't stick to the pan. And now you should actually be able to see the pan just about start to smoke before the meat goes in. But while that reheats, we're quickly going to blend some tomatoes, which we're going to be incorporating to that. So I'll also just be taking you through some of the ingredients we're going to be using to build the sauce. As for the accompaniment, we are going to just follow up with that just before the end of that part. So, nice hot pan. Just going to grab a spoon and we're just going to add that to the pan. And just use the spoon to just break that apart. So basically, remember, your meat is continuously going to cook and is going to continue breaking itself apart as you continue. So very important that you actually watch your pan really well. Don't leave your pan unattended. Remember, this needs a constant mixing technique just to make sure you don't overcook some of the bits. So I'm just going to continue breaking up the chunks. Remember, as you continue to cook, they continue to break up as well. And you can actually use your spoon and just mash them like that. And this should actually be able to help you start to dry off your mince a little faster. Alright, so as that continues, we're quickly going to blend some ingredients which we're going to be adding to the mince. So I'm going to start with some tomatoes. So this is about 2 whole large tomatoes, simple as that. To that, we are also going to add some spring onions. So I'm just going to cut those into a bit of a chunk and add those in there. Always, I like to add a bit of olive oil. It actually helps to flavor the mixture and as well help it to actually puree. And then to that, just a bit of salt. That should actually be able to help you break down the onions while they're in there. And then I'm also going to add some of that red wine. And I'm also going to add some of that barbecue sauce. So I'm just going to cover this up. So this might need you to actually have a blender, but if you don't have one, you can actually use a wooden spoon to break them up through a sieve or your conical strainer. And you should actually be able to get a puree that's a little workable. So just nice tight fit, and we're just going to move that here. And we're just going to blend that into a chunk. And that's just about right. So what you're looking for is some beautiful chunks, just a nice even size. And also, as I said, always just remember to always keep tossing your meat, always keep using your spoon to break up those chunks. Remember, particularly with mince, the best option to always go with is lean mince. Remember, it's healthier for you. It's got less fat, which means it's actually a healthier option. I'm actually working with some lean mince, and as I said, you should be able to tell characteristics of very good mince in relation to how they actually ooze out and release liquid while you cook. So a nice characteristic of mince, it shouldn't actually release too much water. Remember, as much water as you get to see in the pan, that should actually tell you how much fat you're cooking down. So as you can see, our pan is nice and dry at the bottom. We don't have any liquids just accumulating, so that's a very good sign. We're just going to continue breaking up those parts, those chunks of the meat. And basically what you will pick up is as you continue to cook, the pieces actually continue to break down, so it actually gets easier as you continue. I'm just going to change that to this side. And we're just going to start off with the sauce, so I'm just going to quickly be doing the two of them at the same time. So very, very crucial, good time to start your sauce and a good time to start your accompaniment while you're browning your meat. Remember, that does take a bit of time. I'm just going to keep tossing that as we continue, and you're actually going to start seeing the characteristics as we continue to cook it to its full cooked state. So simple as that, we're just going to let that continue. In the meantime, I have another pan on my side here. So this is basically the sauce that's really going to give the bobotie a bit of a character and actually most of its flavor. So I'll be working with half a red onion and 2 white onions. The reason for this is I want the pungency. And remember, we already have some spring onions in there, so you're not really looking for any more pungency than that. The beautiful thing of using white onions, there's a nice beautiful juiciness to them, and it actually helps to really balance your flavors. I'm just going to quickly finish chopping that down. And now our pan is nice and smoking. Easy as that. A bit of oil in there. And then we're just going to start adding our onions. So I'm also going to quickly chop the remaining 2 halves. Always try to look for a very, very fine chop. Remember, this also keeps it consistent. It allows it to cook a little more evenly. Alright, so easy as that. Now we've got 1.5 onions, or about 3/4 cup of onions goes into a hot pan. With a bit of olive oil, as I said. If you don't have olive oil, you could also use a bit of butter, or clarified butter really works well if you actually know how to make some yourself. But if you don't, vegetable oil will work really well. Right, so very simply, as I said, it's more of a 2-pot kind of technique of cooking, but a very, very, very beautiful way of actually turning your mince into a beautiful roast. Right, so our onions are just starting to sweat and they're just starting to color. So simply to that, we're going to add the tomato and spring onion mixture. Remember, in there we had a bit of salt, we had a bit of olive oil. So we're just going to quickly mix that. So I actually like my sauce to be a little chunky because it also gives your bobotie a bit of a character. And now as you can see, the meat is just starting to really brown and the chunks are still big, but nothing to worry about actually. When you get to that particular stage and you're still having an issue breaking those lean chunks of meat, a very, very simple technique I like to use. I'm just going to grab a quick glass here. So a very, very easy technique of actually helping your meat to break apart. I always like to have a glass of water or some stock on the side, and as I fry, I just pour it in little by little. The beautiful thing about that, first of all, it actually helps you to not allow your meat to dry out too quickly, and second of all, it also helps it to break down a little faster. Also remember, it's also crucial to try and cool down your pan. It's only safer that your pan is not too hot, that way you don't overcook or over brown your meat. I'm just going to let that continue. In the meantime, we're just going to come back to our sauce. So simple as that. Now we're just going to finish this off. I'm going to be adding about half a cup of ketchup. So this is just regular ketchup, any ketchup that you manage to get from your regular retail stores should actually be able to work really well. Right, so we're just going to allow that to continue cooking down, and while that continues, we're also going to be incorporating a bit of lemon juice. So I'm just going to grab a sieve here quickly. So I'm just going to use a sieve and just squeeze those right over the sauce. The sieve actually really helps me to get the seeds out really quickly. So we're going to be using the juice of one whole lemon. I'm using an imported lemon particularly for this recipe. If you can actually be able to get your hands on some good imported lemons, they're a little sweeter and they've got a very, very beautiful citrusy finish. If you can't find those, you can actually just use regular lemons, but try and avoid limes because they do give a bit of a sourness. Right, so we're just going to allow that to continue cooking. So remember, particularly for this particular part of the cooking stage for the sauce, this is where your flavors and your textures really start to build up. So it's very crucial that you actually try very much to get most of your ingredients in at this particular stage. Now to that, I'll also be incorporating a little bit of some grated carrots, so I'm just going to pour those in there. So this is just about 40 to 50 grams of carrots, just finely grated, and I used the zester part of the grater. I'm just going to give that a mix like that, and we're just going to finish that off with some chopped parsley. So just a nice easy rough chop. And remember, I'm only using the seeds and not the leaves and not the stemmy bits. If you do have some that you actually reserve from chopping the parsley, remember you could always reserve those. You could throw them in stock or any other sauces that you'll be making later. So they're still actually very useful. Right, so parsley is in. Quick mixture, and actually you start noticing the beautiful colors just stand out as you continue to mix the sauce. Bit of beautiful green coming through. And last but not least, just a bit of sauce to season and a bit of black pepper. So I'm just going to mill some fresh ground black pepper. Right, so simple and easy. We're just going to now let that continue cooking on the side at very low heat. And we're just going to come back quickly to our meat. Just check that out. Actually, you start to notice the mixture starts to really break really well as soon as you add some of that water. And it's now a little easier to try and reduce the chunks to smaller sizes. So we're just going to let that continue. And in the meantime, I'm going to quickly switch pots. And what we're going to do now is we're going to be working on the mashed potatoes, or the sweet potatoes that we're going to be using to make the potato balls. So very simple. I like to just grab a nice working bowl, probably ceramic if you have one, always helps. And all I'm going to do is just use my hands, and I'm just going to break the sweet potatoes into this bowl. So easy and simple. This is something you could actually have your kids, if they're going to be helping you make dinner for this particular part of the day. Very good technique to actually use to keep them busy and also encourage them to learn something while you actually work with them in your kitchen. So I always recommend, for some of the techniques that actually need a bit of hands-on work and not really much attention, always just grab your kids. It's always fun to actually make it a family, an all-round family affair when you're actually making some dinner, especially in the festive season. Remember, you got holidays, and it's just the best way to keep your kids a little busy. Right, so that should be about enough. So I have about half a cup of just mashed up pre-cooked sweet potato. And now very simply to that, I'm going to be incorporating some ingredients. So I'm going to start with some egg. So I'm just going to crack a whole egg in there. I'm just going to keep tossing the meat. Remember, this is just really cooking down really well. We should actually add just one more cup in there just to help it really continue to build its, to really break up and continue building up that nice, beautiful size that we are looking for. And we're just going to let that continue. But in the meantime, I'm just going to divert your attention back here. So in the bowl now, I already have some sweet potato and some egg. I'm only going to add just a small pinch of salt just for seasoning. I'm just quickly gonna give that a mix. Right, so basically very important that you first of all start with your egg and sweet potato. Remember, the egg actually allows you to try and get the sweet potato to really mash up a little faster and get a consistency that you can actually scoop out into a ball. And that's what we're basically looking for. So simple as that. To that, I'm also going to be incorporating about half a cup of breadcrumbs and about a third a cup of flour, just regular all-purpose flour. And all you're going to do is just use your spoon to just continue pressing those ingredients against the side of the bowl, and that should actually help you really reconstitute them a little quick. So as I said, just use the side of your bowl. It always gives you a bit of a grip and allows you to really get a beautiful consistency. Also, another reminder, it's also smarter to actually turn your bowl as you mix. It saves you time and helps you maintain the consistency you're looking for in the shortest time possible. All right, so simple as that. Now I'm just going to finish that off with just a little bit of olive oil. So first of all, olive oil really helps in binding the mixture. It also helps in actually just bringing a bit of a beautiful flavor in there. Right, so now this should be now just about ready to start shaping. And now just before we do that, very crucial that you have a plate just ready to go. And then all I'm going to do now is grab something particularly that I like to actually use to shape these balls while they're cooking, or rather just before cooking them. And I'm going to be working with just a round mold and a fork. So very simply, just spread a bit of oil on a plate. Just pick any plate that you can actually work with. Doesn't have to be as big or as fancy as this one. All you need to do is just grease that around. And then we're going to be using this beautiful mold. And as I said, this particularly very, very handy. You can actually be able to get this at most retail outlets. Just walk up to the store owners and tell them you're looking for a mold or a daring mold that can actually help you plate. You should actually be able to get this in also different sizes. So do feel free to check out your shops and see if you can find them. So just easily, I'm just going to grab just a nice even scoop there. I'm just going to use my hand to shape it. And I'm going to press it right into the center of the ring. And just grab just a little bit more. And now all I'm going to do is just to get a beautiful press and to try and not really squeeze out so much of that air. I'm just going to use a fork. And I'm just going to keep pressing it and then go around. Remember, one particular beautiful part about the fork is it also keeps it makes it a little cleaner to work. And second of all, you can actually cover quite a bit of space and applying the same pressure all around. Remember, your fingertips are not the best. Your fingertips are really pointy and you might not actually be able to get the same shape and consistency. So I always recommend you can work with a fork, you can work with a spoon, whichever one is easiest for you, you can just go with that. So simple as that. Once you press that in, just get a nice beautiful level there. And now all we are going to do is press those out. And I'm just going to repeat the same process for the second one. So just a nice beautiful ball in the palm of your hands. Just roll it but don't squeeze it. And that goes right into your plate. Small press and just a little bit more to fill it to the top. And just continue the same technique. So just a nice firm press around the sides. And actually, if you do have also some free time before making this, if you want to make them in advance or shape them in advance and finish them off on your pan just before serving, also works really well. And it does also save you a lot of time when preparing dinner. So simple as that. So these are gonna go into a hot pan. For that, you're actually going to need just a little bit of butter to color them. Remember, we're going to start them off on a hot pan, and then we're going to proceed on to frying them on both sides just to give them a bit of color and then transfer them. So we're just going to get a nice hot pan going, and we're basically just going to be frying this really quickly. So I'm just going to grab a nice lifter there. So very, very crucial when you're frying your sweet potatoes. I particularly like to use a little butter and a little brown sugar. So I'm just going to grab just a little bit of brown sugar there. And all I do is I like to just sprinkle just a bit of it, just scatter it around the pan. And just basically just start to allow it to caramelize. And then to that we're going to add 2 tablespoons of butter, but I'm going to add half of it first. Right, so basically what you want to do is just melt your butter really quickly. You want to grill the hash browns basically on both sides, and then this is all going to go and finish in the oven. But in the meantime, our mince is now dry. As I can see, it's perfect, it's cooked, it's browned. So all we are going to do now is incorporate it with the sauce that we had earlier, but I'm not going to reheat it with the sauce, so we are going to turn that off first. And all I'm going to do is add the sauce right over the meat. So the idea why I'm basically doing it in that particular fashion, this actually allows me to cool the meat a little faster. just going to give that a quick mixture. So remember, we cooked the sauce a little earlier for the reasons that we would want actually to use it to cool off the pan and to cool off our meat quicker. Right, so once you just given that a mix, remember I'm only mixing it in here just so that I can get the sauce a little more consistent from the heat of the pan and be able to actually mix everything else together. So I'll just give that a few seconds. And in the meantime, we're gonna go in with this beautiful sweet potato browns. And I'm just going to drop those right in the pan. And then something very, very usual that I like to do is just move the pan around the sides. This actually allows you to get just a bit of butter around the bottom edges of the hash browns, and that should actually allow them to actually not stick on the pan even when you keep shaking. So we're gonna add that last remainder of that beautiful unsalted butter, and for that I will need a spoon as well. So I'm just going to show you a technique of how to fry those really well. I'm just going to lower the temperature a little bit. Now all we're going to do is just get a bit of that butter and pour it right over the top. So this is a beautiful technique that actually allows me to try and brown them a little faster, and also just to spread out the heat right around the hash brown so that you actually manage to get that butter to incorporate in there a little faster. Right, so very, very quickly, just about 1 minute on one side and then turn them around. I'm just going to turn up my heat a little bit. And now all I'm going to do is, while the pan is still hot, I'm just going to keep using that beautiful clarified butter. And I'm just going to keep washing that around. So two particular things to remember for this particular stage. The butter will help a nice even golden coloring once it goes into the oven because of the properties of the fat content that butter has. And second of all, it is actually also going to flavor the hash browns, making sure that they're not bland and that all the beautiful flavors from the caramel and the butter actually go right in and actually just incorporate all together. I'm just going to give that a quick shake, and then I'm going to turn off the heat. So at this stage, these are now just about ready to go into a baking dish. So already I have an oven that's been preheating, so I'm just going to set that for about 180 to 200 degrees. And I'm going to grab a baking tray really quickly. Oh. Right, there we go. So this is very handy. I particularly like working with stainless steel and non-stick pans because it actually allows me to move anything I would like to brown into the oven without having to add any grease or any fat onto it. It actually cooks really well, it heats up really quickly, and it always gives me a consistent finish. But what I like to do and show you is there's that little bit of butter that's left in your pan. Please don't discard it. You could just pour that right into the baking dish. And then just move it around, just allow that to just spread out evenly. All I'm going to do is move those beautiful sweet potato hash browns onto the baking dish. And now this is basically just going to go into the oven just for about 10 to 15 minutes. We're just going to let it really brown and heat right through. It might actually shrink slightly because it is going to lose a bit of moisture and a bit of air. But then we just actually want to heat it through just to make sure that the butter really incorporates. And what you'll notice is when it comes out, that beautiful gloss of butter will actually have been absorbed. So we're just going to give that a few seconds while we reheat the oven. And while we do that, I'm quickly going to transfer this beautiful mixture into a bowl. So definitely something you need to remember with your bobotie mixture, always give it a bit of time to cool off. Remember, you are going to be incorporating some raw eggs. And what happens is when you add raw eggs to a hot mixture, the eggs actually start to cook and you actually lose the consistency and the idea you were actually trying to chase. So very, very crucial that you actually keep mixing around your mixture just to help it cool off a little faster. You can make it in advance as well, or you can cool it off in the fridge, but I prefer to just leave it out at room temperature because it doesn't also affect, or rather doesn't influence me to actually raise the temperature in the fridge or change the characteristic of the mixture. Right, so I'm just going to keep mixing that around. This should actually just be a nice temperature now to actually incorporate the eggs in. So very, very simple as that. What you want to do at this stage is you want to grab a whisk, and you want to grab a bowl. And now the bobotie, we're going to be baking it in this dish, so I'm basically just going to be using this particular dish for that. So firstly, I'm going to quickly transfer that mixture into the bowl. So don't be shy of leaving the juices out. Actually leave the juices in there. They do actually help the bobotie to not dry out while it's in the oven. Right, so all your mixture goes in there. And now all you're going to do now is just firmly press it down with your spoon. So this particularly allows it to set really well. It allows the mixture to also spread out evenly. That way you actually help to eliminate any air pockets or any spaces that are in there that might actually form it to actually try or cook and just swell up over the top. So simple as that. Now there's only one last thing to do, which is now to incorporate our eggs. And all I'm going to do now is crack 2 whole eggs into this beautiful bowl. We can discard those. And I'm also going to add just a small pinch of salt and just quickly whisk that together. Simple as that. Just a bit of a whisk and the mixture goes right on top of the mince. All we're going to do now is just give it a bit of a shake, just to allow the egg to just sink in on its own. Remember, the egg is going to cook and lift the mixture up quite a little bit. But just before you finish that off, just a tiny bit of seasoning. And I also like to also incorporate just a bit of that remainder of the fresh parsley. So I'm just going to quickly finely chop that, and I'm just going to sprinkle that over the top. Right, so simple as that. Just a nice sprinkling right over the top. This is just for appearance. You'll actually see the effects of this once this is cooked. Right, so simple as that. So this is now ready to bake. So we're going to be throwing that into the oven for about 15 to 20 minutes, or even lower, or even shorter in cooking time, depending on how quick the eggs cook. And we're also going to be putting the hash browns equally in that same period. So basically you want to bake them at exactly the same time, giving you just enough time to time your sweet potato hash browns and your bobotie. So particularly this, I'm going to explain it once it's done, but as I said, always just give it a bit of a shake before it goes in, just to allow the egg to really sink to the bottom. And all we are going to do now is move that into the oven, and the hash browns as well. Right, simple as that. So this is set at about 180 to 200 degrees. I'm going to set that timer for about, let's say about 16 to 18 minutes. And we're going to take a short commercial break and let that continue cooking. But when we come back, we're going to take it out. I'm going to show you what it looks like. You're going to be able to see what the kind of effects and alterations that you can actually come up with for your bobotie. And I'm just going to conclude by giving you a bit of other options that you can go with, or things that you can actually substitute on this particular dish. So please don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. We took a break and we were just finishing off our bobotie in the oven. We were also doing some beautiful sweet potato hash browns which are now ready, and we're just about to take them out. So I'm just going to just slide those out of the oven and we can see what they both look like. And as you can be able to see, the bobotie is now well set. Actually, just by with the touch of a spoon, I'll be able to show you. Actually, once you put your spoon on the top, it should actually be just a little crispy. That should actually tell you that it's now just well set, and this is now just ready to serve. So I would naturally just serve this directly on the table as it is. I would just serve it just like that, and then I would probably just finish that off with a bit of garnish, and particularly for this one I'm just going to use a cut up chili. And last but not least, the hash browns. This we're just going to lift those off the tray, off the baking tray, sorry, and we're just going to place those like that. And I would naturally just serve it as simple as that. So as I always insist, a lot of techniques to do your own plating. I particularly like to go with one that I find easiest, but I'll show you also something I like to do with the lemon. So I normally just go cutting zigzag right through into the lemon, just like that. Very simple technique, and I insist if you try and do this particular method of garnish, please don't hold the lemon on your hand and try it. The knife might slip and you might actually cut yourself. So I always insist, just use the help of your board. It reduces the risk, and you can actually be able to control your knife a little easier. And it's as simple as that. So all you do is cut in zigzags while you rotate the lemon. And all you do at the end is just give it a twist like that, and it actually comes out really, really beautiful. So those I would just leave on the side like that, and those I would just squeeze over the dish as I continue to consume it, or rather or just before serving, and it just brings a nice, beautiful, refreshing balance of flavors between all the sweetness of the bobotie, all the butteriness of that beautiful hash brown, and it all combines into a very, very simple and beautiful dish. So I have had so much fun showing you how to make this, and I hope you're all now feeling a little more motivated, and you're probably all going to want to try this yourselves. A bit of maybe alterations to what we were using. You can actually skip the eggs if you actually have an issue with eggs or an allergy, so you can actually bake it as it was, just without the eggs. For the spices, you can actually opt to have it hot. You can always incorporate a bit of cayenne, a bit of red chili or green chili if you want to really spice it up. But particularly for the main recipe, for the tradition that actually brings this dish to the table, this is the recipe that I learned, and I hope you are all going to actually enjoy and try and do it as I did it. So from my end, it has been fun. I always recommend, do check out our Facebook page, leave your comments, leave any inquiries that you may have or any questions. Me and my producers are always glad to hear from you, and we are always glad to help by giving you the feedback that you deserve. So from the studios and myself, I bid you farewell. I wish you a lovely season. Enjoy your Christmas break. If you're going to be making this, enjoy it with your family or with your loved one. And until the next episode, when we bring some more beautiful, inspirational dishes from the grandma's pot, this has been a Beef Bobotie from South Africa, and I've been your host, Chef Andy. And until the next time, have a lovely day, have a lovely evening, and enjoy your dinner. Bye-bye.